We are famously a country of people who fled from other places for a variety of reasons. In America, there's always been an affinity toward the rebel soul. That's certainly true of the Irish. I think it's probably also true of the Southern Italians as well. I also think that there's a wish fulfillment that we all have. You've got a big problem. It'd be nice to go to some guy with a white cat on his lap and have him take care of it. You want to get that ticket fixed. There's the noisy neighbor. Sometimes there's far more serious problems that, thank God, most of us don't take those solutions. So I think there's a wish fulfillment. There's a part of us, let's be honest, that would like to. And so I think that reading about people who do it is on some level attractive.
Joining us now on Open Book is Don Winslow, who is an international best-selling author and is writing a new crime trilogy, which is absolutely fabulous. The second book is out last week, City of Dreams. It is the sequel to City on Fire, but previous bestsellers include The Border, The Cartel, Savages. Don, a long time ago, I met you at one of those premieres. Oliver
That's right.
Stone had invited me. I took my daughter with me. It was a pretty intense movie. My daughter was yelling at me. She was probably 17 at the time. She got mad at me. But you don't need an introduction. You've written over 25 novels. You've won pretty much every award. You're also a former safari guide and a private investigator. So you've had this amazing life experience. How did you transition all of this into becoming a novelist, sir?
Anthony, I've always wanted to be a novelist since I was about 6 years old, but it took the world a while to agree with that assessment, and nobody stamps your passport to become a writer. So I just did a lot of other things that you alluded to, but all the time writing, trying to keep it up. My goal was to write 5 pages a day, no matter what. I wrote on buses, trains, tents, Buddhist monasteries in China when I was leading hiking trips up there, all over the place. I finally had a book. The first 15 publishers disagreed, but finally the 16th hit me and I was on my way.
So, first of all, I love your writing style. So I want to talk a little bit about that before we get into the specific book. You tap into a vein of human emotion and understanding about how human beings actually are. We present ourselves to the world a certain way in the terms of the way we would like people to see us,
Yeah.
but there's a seemliness to all of us. I mean, let's just face it, there's truth to all of that. There's a carnal nature to all of us. Why are you so good at that? What is your gift, sir?
Well, again, thanks. I don't know that I have a gift. I think I've worked at it. I spent 15 years on and off as a private investigator, working all kinds of cases from arson cases through homicide, fraud, child sexual abuse. You get to know if you will, the darker side of people in that regard. You get to know that most people are neither all good or all bad, but the famous shades of gray. The way I view my job is to bring the reader into worlds that he or she couldn't otherwise enter. And the way that I try to do that is to see it through those person's eyes, through the character's eyes. And that requires not objectivity, but subjectivity. I'm not trying to be objective when I'm writing a character. I'm trying to portray their point of view, however distasteful at times we might find that.
It's and I appreciate it, and it's one of the reasons why I love reading your books. So you've been working on this trilogy for 28 years.
Mhm.
Take us back to the initial inspiration. The funny part about this is a year ago, I was steeped in the Iliad
No
and the
kidding.
Odyssey, and
No
the reason
kidding.
was one of my kids was in school and they were reading it. I was a classic minor at Tufts. So I had read the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Oresteia, the all the
Right.
plays of Sophocles, the Clytemnestra. I know what happened to Agamemnon's daughter at
Yep.
Iphigenia.
Sure.
I can take you through all that stuff because it was my studenthood at
Wow.
Tufts.
Yeah.
But when I was reading your book, I said, okay, I've got to figure out who is who in the book. Okay, I figured out quickly that
Mhm.
Danny was Aeneas, and obviously Liam was Paris, and we can go through the different characters. But
Sure.
why? What caused you to use the Homeric epic
Yeah.
poem as the subtext for this.
Yeah, unlike you, it was not my minor or my major in college. I majored in, of all things, African history, so I had this very kind of narrow education. Later in life, though, I decided to try to educate myself and go to the classics. And early on, obviously, you hit the Iliad and the Odyssey. Uh, it struck me so forcefully, Anthony, the similarities between incidents in those classics and real life crime incidents that I grew up with growing up in Rhode Island. And so I started to wonder, could I write a trilogy that would stand alone as a crime saga, that you could read without any reference to the classics at all, but at the same time that tracked the stories and the characters and the themes of those great classics because I was so fascinated with them. You mentioned the Orsteia, uh, that's a noir plot. If you just look at it, you put a trumpet behind that and put it in black and white, you've got a noir movie. Guy comes home from the war, his wife blames him for their daughter's death, as you alluded to. They kill him in the bathtub, she and her lover. The son comes home and kills them in revenge. Absolutely noir. And so that launched this 28-year odyssey, no pun intended, to try to accomplish that.
I'm obviously, I mean, I did the DNA test. I'm 87% Southern Italian,
Okay.
and apparently I'm about 13% Greek. Of course, my mother says that has to be from your father's side.
Right, right. She's
But
going
the
to
Greeks,
deny
the
that.
Italians are.
Yeah.
But this area that you're talking about is laden with Irish and Italian immigrants.
Hmm.
The underworld is in Rhode Island. There's a major underworld in Boston and New York, and some parts of Philly. But Rhode Island really has a undercurrent of the
Yeah,
underworld.
yeah.
You grew up with this, so how much of this is based on your real life experience?
Experience would be an exaggeration, I think. I was a kid. I grew up around it. I knew some of these guys. They were always around. Rhode Island, as you know, is about the size of a Walmart parking lot, and I've always thought that the state motto should be "I know a guy." Because
You
everybody.
wrote that. I
I
think
think I
that at
put that
City
in the
on
book.
Fire,
Yeah, I
City
think
on
that
Fire. I think you put "I know a guy" in there,
I
which
think
made me
that's in
laugh
there.
because we all know a guy from the neighborhood I grew up in.
Right, exactly. So, it was always around. Listen, I mean, I grew up we're not Italian, but I grew up in an Irish Italian neighborhood. My parents used to joke we were the only family, in 5 blocks that didn't have a vowel at the beginning or the ends of their names. And so I was very familiar with the culture, and loved it, loved both of those cultures. And so Danny Ryan, the protagonist of this, look, I've known the likes of Danny my whole life. I played hockey with them, surfed, went to the beach, went to the bars. So this was really familiar to me.
You the beginning of the book captures everybody's imagination. The first sentence is Danny Ryan watches the woman come out of the water like a vision emerging from his dreams of the sea. That's in City of Fire, of course.
Mhm.
That's the first book, and this
Yeah.
is the precursor to City of Dreams, which we'll
Mhm.
get to. But that is he's describing Helen of Troy, the most beautiful woman
Correct.
in the world,
Right.
and of course she has her misfiring. Helen, the famous Helen, she leaves with Paris. She breaks off with her husband
Hmm.
Menelaus, the brother of the king of Greece,
Hmm.
of at least the Federation of Kingdoms,
Right.
and she leaves for Troy. And so this is sort of the mix-up that happens. The
Yeah.
Italians think she's dating one of the Italian princes,
Hmm.
mafia princes, but she ends up with Liam, who's pretty self-centered,
Yep.
like our famous Paris from years ago.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about this. Um, Danny wants an ordinary life, but he's
Mhm.
not allowed to have one, is he?
No, no, and that's all he wants. Danny's a pretty normal guy, and he just wants normal, but he wasn't born into that. His mom abandons him when he was 2 weeks old. By the way, the same as Aphrodite abandoned Aeneas. He's left with his very alcoholic and distant father. Uh, his extended family is this Irish crime family, but all he wants is his wife and his kid in a home somewhere. But the conflict between the two mobs takes over. He ends up being a soldier, and then eventually, not to give too much away, a leader in a losing war.
You, yeah, you write about him, and again, I don't want to give away the plot because it's just so enjoyable. But I want to talk more generally about life. We're planning our lives, Don, and then other things happen to
Hmm.
us, right?
Right.
We're expecting something to happen, and then we get punched in the face, as like
Yep.
Mike Tyson says, or
Right.
you're making plans, God's laughing.
Right.
Your book is really about this, isn't it? Isn't the Iliad, when you think about the guidebook that the Iliad is, or the guidebook
Mhm.
that City on Fire or City of Dreams happens to be? It's about unplanned lives and your reaction to that. Is that fair to say?
I
Is that
think
true
that's
for all of us?
Yeah, I think it's true for all of us. I think it's absolutely fair to say that the first person actually who's picked up on that I've talked to about these books. They're, as were Greek and Roman literature, largely about fate, largely about our arguments, if you will, with the gods, and what happens to us in our life and how we literally in those classics get blown from place to place, with no control. I always think about this, when we're making prognostications on politics or the future or even sports. We always kind of think we know what's going to happen based on what has happened, and then
Right,
something just comes out of the sky,
right,
whether it's COVID or whatever, and changes everything. And that's certainly what happens to Danny. He's laying on that beach. It's a beach I grew up on. That first sentence, by the way, hasn't changed in 28 years. And he sees this woman come out of the water, and he sort of unconsciously knows nothing's ever going to be the same.
right. There you go, and that's how our lives go. Certainly, that happened to us with COVID.
Hmm.
The Godfather, The Sopranos,
Yeah.
Goodfellas. It's hard to make a gangster story fresh these days.
Hmm.
You also went back and looked at some of your interviews. I think you or one of the journalists compared The Godfather to Henry IV,
Right.
which is Shakespearean play, and
Yeah.
so I actually did not catch that and I've read The Godfather 5 times, so I
Yeah.
had to go back and read Henry IV, and of course it's right there.
Yeah.
All of the hidden totems are in there.
Yeah.
You also said that there's about 12 or so storylines that we have in life that we have a tendency to remanufacture.
Hmm.
So how did you make this so fresh and so compelling given that?
Man, again, thank you. That's why it took 28 years, because I kept failing at it, Anthony. You know, um, I doubted my ability to do it for a long time. And for a long time, I was right about that, because I wasn't getting it done. The issue was trying to figure out what are the modern equivalents of these ancient events. You can't have a Trojan horse being pulled into Providence. I don't know who, Aphrodite, a Greek goddess, would be in Providence, Rhode Island in 1988. And so it was a matter of trying to find the very modern and very human aspects of those stories to try to make it fresh. I had a test. I would reread a chapter after I thought it was finished. And if you could read it with no reference to the classics at all, then it passed and I put it in the book. But if I couldn't, if I thought, this does not making sense without reference to the Iliad or the Odyssey, then it had to be rewritten.
All right, so I'm going to test myself here with the very famous Don Winslow. Okay, Sal in the book is Achilles.
Yep.
Pat is Hector.
Yes.
Okay, Danny is Aeneas.
Yes.
Liam is Paris.
Yes.
Okay, who is Odysseus in this book?
Chris Palumbo.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay,
Hey, Anthony, if you
yeah.
want, when we're off the air, I'll send you the whole key. I have a key of every character in all
Okay, yeah.
three
If you
books.
don't mind, I would
I will do
enjoy
that.
that actually
That'd be
because
fun to do.
I
Yeah.
think you figured out that I'm an aficionado of
I
the
have.
classics,
Yeah.
and I've read all of these,
Apparently.
and it's important. Like I teach my kids, I forced my son who absolutely hated me for it. I forced him to take a course on Dante
Wow.
Alighieri.
Wow.
I forced him to read all three books.
Yep.
And there was a professor at Tufts, who's a very famous professor. He went to Tufts after me. I said, "You got to take this course," and he hated me for it. And he's now about 10 years out of school.
Yep.
And I was in his apartment, and he had the Inferno open,
Oh my gosh.
and he had it earmarked. And I
Oh
said, "What is
wow.
this?" He says, "Well, I'm going back into the inferno because of Dante's description of human beings
Huh?
and what human beings are actually really like and
Yeah.
what the layers are of the
Yeah.
human beings." You mentioned Dante in book one,
Yep.
the seventh circle of hell. You had that
Right.
to, a spot for certain people. Of course, we know the ninth circle is where Judas and Brutus live, the betrayer
Yeah.
of the state and God. They live on
Exactly.
that frozen lake with. But your legacy. If I'm going to ask you, this is a little bit of a weird question,
All
but I'm
right.
thinking about this as it relates to Don Winslow. You are doing something, at least I think, one of your legacies will be you're a great storyteller, but I think there's something else here. Your legacy is you're taking these stories and you're making them contemporary, and there's a message in these stories. I think I know what the message is, but I want to hear the message from you. It is about the unplanned life, it is about fate, but there's something else going on. So what is it, Don?
I think it's about sin, if you will, if you still
Yeah.
believe in that concept, and the
Hmm.
possibility of redemption. Uh, I think, listen, I was raised Catholic, sort of the Irish branch of that. I think that, however you feel about that later in life, you never leave it really, you
Well,
know.
you know what the Italians say about the Irish, right? I mean, they took the Catholicism way more seriously. I mean,
Yeah,
we when we were kids growing up, you guys were doing everything, you know.
yeah,
We
yeah.
we were half faking it most of the time, you know.
Right. Well, you know what I say about the Irish, looking forward to our next defeat.
Yeah, you said that. I think
Yeah,
that was in book one as well.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was
But
the.
I think that there's always that thought about what have I done? Should I have done it? And if I did it and it was wrong, can I ever come back? Can you find forgiveness? But I think that the major question of crime fiction, and maybe the major question in my fiction, without getting too
Mhm,
heavy about this,
mhm.
is the question: how do you live decently in an indecent world?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and
You know?
ultimately, where are your morals? Or if they're
Yeah.
not coming from God, is there something internally
Right.
about yourself that's going to allow you to have certain morals? So,
Right. And can you navigate that world that often, is not always that easy of, black and white and what's right or
yeah,
wrong,
no question.
you know?
So I have a lot of young listeners, and so hopefully we'll get a group of young listeners introduced to your books, and not only these two but others. But for the young listeners, the Aeneid is an interesting book
Hmm.
because Augustus didn't like the idea that the Greeks had these two wonderful tomes,
Yep.
the Iliad and the Odyssey,
Right.
several thousand years old, and so he went to Virgil, who was his, poet laureate, if you will. He was
Sure.
really the government's poet.
Yep.
He was always pissed at Ovid. If you remember the Acts of Love,
I do.
he banished Ovid. He didn't like
Right.
the immorality in the
Of
Acts of Love or the
right.
Metamorphosis,
Yeah.
but he liked Virgil. I mean, he had ups and downs with Virgil, and he said you have to create a epic
Hmm.
about Rome,
Right.
and so he tied it back to Troy. And so I have to ask you this question
Hmm.
because when I read the Iliad, the Trojans seem more valorous than
Yes,
the Greeks. The
definitely.
Trojans,
Yeah.
particularly Hector,
Right.
has more of a moral integrity to his personality.
Yep.
There's a
Yep.
there's a scene in your book where I guess the Hector figure is Pat.
Hmm.
His kid is frightened of him. It's very
Yep.
famous in the
Famous
Iliad as
scene from
well.
the Iliad. Yes.
But I guess the question I have for you related to this is there a tome for America? We know now there's a tome for the Greek civilization, there's a tome for the Roman civilization. If you said it's 1,000 years from now, Don, and somebody was looking back at the
Hmm.
American era,
Hmm.
is there a piece of literature that you could look to and say, well, that's going to get to the pantheon of the Iliad, the Odyssey, or the Aeneid?
I don't know if there is an epic. I think if we look at a trilogy by John Dos Passos,
Mm-hmm.
the 49th Parallel,
Yep.
and the two books that surround it, might be the closest to that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
I think in
Mm-hmm.
terms of sort of larger history of a certain era, if I were to look at certain American authors that I think best describe in a way our history and culture, it would be the late Jim Harrison.
Sure,
And I think one of the most underrated novels ever, The Road Home. And also maybe the collective writings of Richard Russo,
sure.
who I think's written, about a certain aspect of America, the sort of Northeast small town,
Hmm.
But I think those
Did
would
you
be my,
did
a
you
lot
ever
of
read
people would,
Winesburg, Ohio?
of course,
Yep.
sure.
Hmm.
Yeah. And a lot of people would, I think, talk about Philip Roth,
Yep.
you know. Uh, but for me, I think that Dos Passos and Russo and Harrison really stand out. But in terms of a fictional work that would be analogous to the Iliad or the Odyssey or the Aeneid, I don't think that there is one. And I think there
Yeah.
was something about epic poetry
Hmm.
that's so particular and so specific. And as you alluded to, I mean, the Aeneid was basically written for political purposes,
Yes.
to justify the Augustan reign,
Yep.
and it certainly did that.
Yeah, but it's interesting, because Virgil in his off writings from the Aeneid,
Yeah,
why did he pick Troy? Again, one he felt was valorous, the other one was being driven by ego.
yeah,
Achilles, Agamemnon, the rivalry, the wrath of Achilles, ultimately him
right.
not fighting. Um, I don't want to give away too much of this book, but this book, the second book, is equally phenomenal because he's now your protagonist, who is Danny. He's now transforming. There's some tragedy that he's had to face in his life. He's
Hmm.
had the crimes and the situation that happened to him in Providence, and now he's seeking an escape.
Hmm.
The same way Aeneas was running through the tunnels of Troy
Right.
as the Troy was burning,
Hmm.
and of course it was Aeneas himself that had to explain to everybody what happened at Troy with the Trojan
That's
horse, how
right.
they got fooled. It was never in the Iliad.
Thank you for
Um,
saying that. Thank
yeah,
you. No one knows that. Yes,
yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, you see that? It's not just the hair and the face, Winslow. I actually have
You
read a lot of bullshit
you
in my life. You see
you
that?
know this stuff
Yeah,
inside
see
and out.
that?
Everyone
Yeah.
thinks it's in the Iliad, and it's not.
No.
It's Aeneas talking to Dido, and he says, "Sorrow, unspeakable sorrow, you ask me to bring to life once more, my queen,"
So
and
here he is.
that's the story.
This is a righteous. He is a moral guy that has done immoral things. Your protagonist,
Hmm.
but he's primarily righteous, and he's in search of something. What is he searching for in City of Dreams without giving up the plot?
A place to put his feet, a place to finally put his feet. He's got a senile father, he needs to take care of. He has an infant son that he needs to take care of. And so his dream is as modest as it is impossible. He wants a normal life. He wants some security for those two people in his life. And that's what he's looking for.
Yeah.
And he accidentally finds love.
So it's an amazing story. It's one that you can't stop reading. America loves a criminal, Don.
Hmm.
And that's my reaction to America. I want to get your reaction. You're a crime writer. There are so many different criminals. Why does America love a rogue, love a criminal?
Listen, we are famously a country of people who fled from other places for a variety of reasons, whether it was economic or legal or religious. So I think in America, there's always been an affinity toward the rebel soul. That's certainly true of the Irish. I think it's probably also true of the Southern Italians as well. Uh, and so, a big part of our culture, at least from the Anglo perspective, comes from the Robin Hood stories and then cowboys and all of that. I also think that there's a wish fulfillment that we all have. Do you know what I mean? You've got a big problem. It'd be nice to go to some guy with a white cat on his lap and have him take care of it. You want to get that ticket fixed. There's the noisy neighbors. Sometimes there's, far more serious problems that, thank God, most of us don't take those solutions. But I think there's a wish fulfillment, and there's a part of us, let's be honest, that would like to. And so I think that reading about people who do it is on some level attractive. I also think that crime fiction talks about humanity in extremis. It's so often about life and death. It's so often about serious issues of right and wrong, that I think people find compelling.
And it's interesting. I it would be remiss of me not to talk about the former president. I think
No.
that you and I at one point had our signals crossed, but I think you finally got my vibe. I was
Yep.
trying to help him, and I did make a mistake, which I have apologized to the American public for. We through cognitive dissonance, we
Hmm.
let too many things go. But
Yeah.
at least I have been man enough to admit that and
Right.
apologize for them. Many of my peers, which would include Pompeo or Nikki Haley
Right.
or any of these other acolytes, have not
Not at
been
all.
willing. They will not admit the mistake that was
No.
made.
Yeah.
I guess the question I have for you, because you're a crime writer, and Trump is a fully frontal criminal. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's just there's no question about it. I saw it
Yeah.
up close and personal, and but yet there's an appeal to a very large group of people,
Hmm.
despite what the prima facie evidence is in front of them, Don.
Yep.
So, what your life experience as a crime writer, your life experience in the world, politics, family, what is that? Why is that?
I think you're talking about a group of people who are afraid of the future, afraid of what they're seeing. It comes out in their language,
Hmm.
replacement theory, you will not replace us. And they're frightened. And I think frightened people search for simple solutions. And Trump is a master of the elevator pitch. He's a master of those one line, simple solutions, almost all of which are horrendous and evil lies.
Yeah.
But I think that people who feel confused, feel that they're left behind. Some of them I have some sympathy for, a lot I don't, by the way.
Hmm.
That's tremendously appealing. And in
Well,
times of uncertainty, people look for that strong man.
so despite my trials and tribulations with him, I'm embarrassed to admit this to you, but I'm going to admit it to you
Come on.
because I grew up in a blue collar neighborhood, not
Yeah.
too dissimilar from the areas that you're describing in Rhode Island. There were
Mhm.
Irish and blacks and Italians. My dad was a crane operator.
I read
I
that.
would say by and large, my family is pro Trump.
Hmm.
Despite my explanation of him, his mendacity, his criminality,
Hmm.
what he's like as a human being,
Hmm.
they're pro Trump because
Hmm.
of that fear that you're talking about.
Yeah.
We went from working class economic aspiration in our country
Right.
to working class economic desperation. And
Exactly.
a result of
Exactly.
which is a very large group of people that feel that he represents them, even though he's not offering a policy solution.
Right.
At least he's providing a finger in the eye of the establishment.
Well,
He's a metaphor for their anger.
he's acknowledging them in the ways that the Democratic Party has failed to do in a
Yeah,
large
but
part.
used to though.
It
Those people
used to.
voted for Lyndon Johnson. They voted for
Exactly.
FDR. Those people.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, I grew up in the same way, and my mom had a Kennedy button, on my shirt when I was 6 years old, and you'd
sure,
walk around the neighborhood making up poems about Kennedy and Nixon. I grew up in,
right.
exactly the same way. Now, I live half the year in Rhode Island and half the year in a rural area outside of San Diego. 76% voted Republican
Yeah,
in
there you
my
go.
little town. Now, my neighbor across the fence, old Wayne, old cowboy, he and I would have our discussions about Trump. He phoned me up 2 weeks ago and said, I'm done with him. I mean, out of the blue.
Yeah, that's starting to happen.
Yeah.
Even my buddy Sean Hannity. I grew up with Sean.
Did you
Has
really?
finally admitted to me that he went overboard with Trump, and that he quote unquote is starting to see things more
Yeah.
consistent with the way I see them. I think that's as much as you're going to get out of Sean. But
Yeah.
you have any political ambitions yourself? I'm
No, no,
assuming
no,
not, right? No.
no, no,
I had to
absolutely not.
ask that only because you have such a good touch for certain things that are going on.
I appreciate that, but
Um,
no, none whatsoever.
my my podcast is famous for our 5 words, and so I'm going to read you these 5 words,
Okay.
and then you'll react to them. Okay, you'll
Cool.
give me your reaction. Okay,
Yeah.
it can be short and sweet or long if you like.
All right.
Let's talk about tragedy, Don.
Tragedy always has to do with the tragic flaw. Do you know classically that an individual has one weakness that brings him down, symbolized by the Achilles heel?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I have this feeling that very often our greatest strength is simultaneously our greatest weakness. That our tragic flaw is also in some ways our heroic strength.
It's interesting. What about the universality of tragedy, meaning that as members of the human race, our humanity itself is tragic. This life is really
Mhm.
on the road to dying,
Right,
and of
right.
course, as a result of which we all know where we're going. I
Yep,
mean, Mel Brooks has a funny line,
yep.
relax, none of us are getting out of here alive.
Right, right.
But the truth of the matter, this mortality weighs on us. Could it? And obviously, it influences our behavior, right?
Mhm. Sure. Listen, I think, I know now in ways I didn't used to that I have more days behind me than I have ahead of me. This never ends well, So for me, the point is, it's a cliche, is to live every day. Less and less to get too concerned about the small stuff,
Right. No,
you
no,
know.
exactly. Listen, I mean, all right, let me go to word number two. You ready? Love.
Hmm. I think love is an attitude. I don't listen. I fell in love at first sight, Anthony, with my wife, and we've
Yeah, and
been
I've seen
married
I've seen you on social media. You guys are together 38 years, right?
38 years.
Yep.
First May.
Congratulations. Yep.
Thank you. Now she wasn't instantly in love with me. I hasten to add that took a while, but for me it
Well,
was,
look, you grow on people. You wear them down, Don. What can I tell you, right?
well,
You
like a
grow on them.
fungus, right?
Right. Well, that's my thing. I'm a toe fungus. Now that I'm in your life, it's going to be very hard for you to get me out of your life,
Uh,
despite your, whatever you paint on your toe, you're still stuck with
you
me.
have to come up to Rhode Island. We'll hang out. We'll get you
All right. I
some
would, I would, I would, I would really enjoy
some
that. By the
real
way, I think,
chowder, and
I
we'll
would
go to the
enjoy
beach.
that
I would
because
enjoy that too. We'll talk about the classics. That'd be
yeah,
great.
yeah, no, they're lining my wall here. These books. I mean, they were a big part of my life.
Oh
Because
man, that's so flattering.
my family we weren't readers in my house,
Hmm.
and so in order to get the education, I had
Hmm.
to force myself through good discipline to start reading.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah,
and then I said, all right, there's 5,000 years of very smart people that are some of it the Catholic Church burnt up, frankly, but a
right.
lot of it is still remaining. I mean,
Yeah,
I think there's only 6 or 7 of Sophocles' plays. I think he may have
sure.
written 35 to 50 of them, for all
Maybe
we know.
6 or 7 survive.
Right?
I during this process, I would take online college courses
Yeah. Mhm.
about all of these works, which were
What
enormous
about
works.
Elizabeth Van Diver? Have you ever heard of her?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, I took Elizabeth's courses on
Okay.
each of those works, enormously useful.
You're reading and listening to the same things that I listen to. I mean,
Amazing.
so I'll give you a funny part of that. So
Hmm.
one of my classmates at Harvard Law School, we were studying for the bar exam, and we got these tapes, and the tapes were on torts or
Hmm.
contracts, and you'd put them into your little Sony Walkman, and you would
Right.
you would study. And he turned to me and said, somebody should really do this for the great professors in the
Hmm.
universities. And so
Hmm.
when he graduated from law school, he built something called the Great Courses.
Get out of town. I'm
Yeah,
an
yeah.
addict
So
on
he's
those.
yeah. So
Yeah.
he is, and now he's got this web app called Wondrium.
I was
Um,
listening to it before I got on this interview.
yeah, so I'm a big subscriber to
Me
Wondrium
too.
as well.
Yep.
But Elizabeth Van Diver,
Hmm.
another person I'd recommend to you if you haven't listened to him is Rufus Fears
Hmm.
on the great heroes of Greece and the great heroes of Rome.
Right.
Professor Rufus Fears is
Yeah.
extraordinary. All right, 3 more words, sir. Then I'm going to get
All
you
right.
out of here. Are you ready?
Okay.
Conflict,
The essence of crime fiction, the essence of all fiction. No conflict, no story.
corruption.
An American way of life.
Yeah, but really a way of human life. No.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
listen, I think we can get very, oh my God, my vocabulary has gone to hell. Uh, sanctimonious about
Yeah.
corruption.
Right.
But let's be aware that there's a certain kind of corruption that has made the world run, and in some cases made it
Yeah.
run better than it was.
So one of my maid friends said to me that
Hmm.
American corruption
Hmm.
is when you actually bribe the person and they do the thing for you.
Hmm.
He says the Chinese corruption is you bribe the person and they don't do it
They
for
don't
you.
do it for you. That's so
Okay. And he
true.
says,
Yeah.
ultimately, if we start having corruption that doesn't work, it's going to be more damaging to the society. Anyway, it's
Yeah.
a very cynical view. But
Yeah.
my last word for you, which is you understand about as well as anybody, is the word crime.
Yeah. You know, crime is a fungible concept. You know, we have a certain kind of crime, but then there's sort of massive economic crimes that are committed against entire classes of people. Um, and our concept of crime changes all the time. So you have people in prison now serving time for offenses. I guess air quoting on the podcast doesn't work.
Yeah.
Offenses
Yeah.
that are no longer crimes.
Right.
You know, so when we say crime, it's not like that's carved in marble.
Yeah.
It
It's
used to be a
interesting.
crime to run numbers in the neighborhood, right? You
Right.
probably remember those people.
All right. Well, they still exist, believe it or not.
Yeah, sure.
There's still cash only restaurants where I live because of that. Right.
Of course.
They're laundering the
Of course.
their offenses. They're laundering their offenses, Don.
Right.
Okay.
But Shaw said, you know, any crime society can't control, they turn into a virtue.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
now we have, you know, the lottery, and
Yeah. Of
it's a
course. Yeah.
good
Yeah. No.
thing.
I mean, how quote unquote helping the education system, right?
Right.
Before I let you go, let's talk about TJ Newman, who is
Yeah.
a mentee of yours.
Hmm.
She's written 2 phenomenal books, and I've got her coming up on my
Oh,
podcast.
good.
So
You'll have a good time.
I'd like you to tell us a little bit about her, and then I'd like you to come up with a question that I need to ask her. That, of course, I wouldn't be able to ask her if I didn't know Don Winslow.
Well, let me see if I can do that. First, let me describe TJ. I mean, she was a flight attendant for many years, you know, trying to get published unsuccessfully. She's a terrific writer, an extraordinarily nice person, smart person, funny person. Listen, Tej never needed my help learning how to write. Let me be very clear about that. Okay, what Tej needed, I call her Tej, TJ. What she needed was a little help on the business side. You know, and so basically, you know, my job was putting her and my agent, our agent, Shane Salerno, together. Shane also wrote, like, is a A-list screenwriter in his own, you know, wrote little books, little movies rather, like Armageddon and all the sequels to Avatar and that kind of thing. And then Shane got her the right kind of publication and the right kind of deals. Um, what you might want to ask, depending on how you're feeling in your podcast on that particular day, is ask TJ for her grossest airline flight attendant story.
Okay, well, you know I'm going to be asking that, okay? The
Yeah.
grossest.
The grossest moment she experienced on an airplane, and then sit back.
All right, see, this is value added from Don Winslow.
Yeah, come on, I'm here
Well,
to help.
you've got another book coming out, the final book in the Danny Ryan trilogy, City in Ruins, is
Yeah.
coming out in 2024.
Yep.
Anything else you're thinking about publishing?
No.
All right,
No.
well,
I'm retiring, you know, to focus on some of the issues that we were discussing.
and I think you've got Elvis Presley coming up, right? He's going to
I
be the
do.
protagonist,
Yes, yes.
right?
Austin
The
Butler will be
the
playing
incredible
Danny Ryan.
Austin Butler,
Yep.
you know.
And I've got a TV series coming out that's based on my 3 big fat drug books, called The Border on FX. I just watched the pilot yesterday.
Cool. Yeah, no, I read The Border. I that was a great airline. You talk about an airline read.
Yeah.
Savages and The Border. I think I picked those up in the airports as I was traveling around.
Well, good for you, because I was told for, you know, 25 years that I was not an airport author.
Yeah.
You know?
No, they're in the airports, man. I took
Yeah,
a,
they are.
so this book, City of Dreams, is a fantastic novel. There's a rite of passage in this book. It's a journey. But I think the most compelling thing about your writing is that you identify what people are really like. You know, I had Robert Greene on a few months back on the laws of human nature, the
Yeah.
48 laws of power, and we pretend that we're somebody that we're actually not. There's this what Hermann Hesse once said, there's an abraxas in our personalities. There's a good and an evil, like he wrote in the story Damien.
Yep.
And it's the best among us can control the evil parts and excel at the good parts, which of course you do a great job of, Mr. Winslow. Thank you very much for joining us on
Thank
Open
you.
Book.
Thank you
I
for
enjoyed
having
it.
me. Listen, I've really enjoyed this.
You're going to want to deal with somebody you can trust. We operate from the standpoint of every interaction. If you tell somebody you're going to call them tomorrow, call them tomorrow. Everything we do is a chance to build on that trust or negatively tear it down if we do it wrong. We treat each other with that always in mind and our customers always in mind. It's been a huge part of the culture.
So joining us now on Open Book is Matt Ebert. He's the founder and CEO of Crash Champions. So before we get into the founding of Crash Champions, and I want you to, of course, tell us about that, I need your background first, Matt. Where are you from? How'd you get to be Matt Ebert?
Yeah, the beginnings are much more modest. I think similar to a lot of people's stories, even yours. You start out more modest with the big ambitions, and then you finally get to where I am today as the the CEO and founder of this big national company. But grew up in a small town in central Illinois. So small, I think there were 40 people in my graduating class, and that put me in a spot to where my parents didn't have much money. So some of the things that shape you in childhood, and looking back, you always wonder, what drives you today. But pretty strict upbringing and not much money to spend. And so the answer was always a lot of times no, like can't do that, can't do this. And so a little bit of how I ended up loving cars so much was the freedom that it gave me when I could finally move around. A little bit of the drive to want to make a little money was so that I could afford to go do the couple things that I was told as a kid I couldn't. So that's a little bit of the driving force, and grew up where college wasn't going to really be an option for me. So, kind of starting where you are or working with the hand you're dealt. Just by pure coincidence, I wrecked my car when I was 16. And so now my freedom just went away. I don't know if you've ever had a car accident or how it makes you feel.
I wrecked my parents' car. The worst story imaginable. They went away on a weekend trip. I was underage driving the car and wrecked the car. So you have to imagine the punishment was quite severe.
Oh, wow.
And justified.
Yeah, mine was only it hurt me, it didn't hurt them, so that's a way worse situation. But for me, I scared to death of making an insurance claim, didn't know what to do. The great thing about being in a small town is everybody, right? So I knew a technician in town that worked on cars in his garage at night. And so I went over there and asked him if he could help me or show me how to fix my car. So I learned how to fix my car from him, and then started going there after school, working on other cars with him, and got a job with him right after high school. So that was really the start of becoming in the industry. I loved making things better. Like it's a great feeling watching a wrecked car like come back to life, get returned to its the condition it was before it got wrecked. And so loved doing it. And I always wanted to own my own business, so I tried some other things first. Even as a kid, I'd run around the neighborhood with a lawnmower, mowing lawns for I think maybe $5. I don't know what that and a paper route. So always was trying to do something on my own, and ended up working out this way.
You're a hustler. But listen, you're in a hard business. So let's talk about Crash Champions. Number one, why'd you name it Crash Champions?
That's interesting because it wasn't always Crash Champions. I started with a partner. The guy I was working for had an idea, why don't we open a shop together? So I was the minor partner with him for a long time. And once he was finally ready to sell to me, this is back in 2014, I wanted to rebrand the company because we just named it New Lenox Auto Body in New Lenox, Illinois. So that name wasn't really going to travel, right? So wanting to expand, I hired like 2 or 3 small advertising firms to come up with a bunch of names. And they were all horrible. So I'm the type, like when I'm shopping for something or see it and it's what I want, I know it right away. And so the names, none of them were resonating with me. One of the firms finally, when I said, look, like we got to do something different, they came in and interviewed me, a couple people, and got to learn what we were all about. And so the concept of being a hero for our customers came up, and Crash Champions. And, our logo has a little cape in it. So truly helping people in a time of need is the storyline that came up from what we really were about, and hence the name Crash Champions. And I thought, look, like, people don't have accidents every day, so it's not typical they remember the names of body shops, but I thought at least it's a little unique and different. Where they hear it, it might resonate. So that's the background of the story.
I love the name, and obviously you're in the auto repair business. You're fixing these cars. You don't know this probably about my history, but I grew up in a motorcycle family. My uncle had a motorcycle shop. One of my cousins is an auto glass installer. I have two other cousins that are in a body shop. I'm basically from a blue collar neighborhood, but you did something extraordinary here. How many Crash Champion centers are there now?
Just over 640 today.
Yeah. Just think about that. Okay, so you were able to take what was a local model. It's very hard to do, and you are the safe light, effectively, right? Because my cousins have a small proprietary, they're small sole proprietor of a glass installation shop on Long Island. And when I sit down with them, I say, well, what's your big competition? Safe Light, everyone knows Safe Light, they do the advertising and so forth. So take us through the Matt Ebert formula for success. How do you go from one collision expert, one collision shop to 640?
Yeah, great question. And I might make this thing run over if I talk about all of it, but
please,
I think
please do. I think it's important.
One thing is this: like, I learned a simple principle that that people know, and that is the way to be successful is find out what people want or need and bring it to them, right? And so you mentioned, like, in the past, collision repair was a lot of mom and pop small shops across the country, and it still is. It's very, the industry name is fragmented for it. It's very fragmented market, but the vehicles are so complex today. And I saw that developing, a few years ago with the development of ADAS technology and this mission to have self-driving cars. It's very, very hard when you're small to be able to keep up with the amount of technology, the amount of equipment that you need, the training that you need to be able to fix the cars properly today. So it's a little bit of survival instinct of, like, it's going to be a world where you have to be big in order to keep up. And then, very much insurance pay in our industry. That's what people have car insurance for, is to pay for the accidents. And so there was a big movement that started maybe 10, 15 years ago, where the administration of the claim was shifted from the carriers to the body shop because it's so much easier. They get claims cost efficiency from that. And so there was a shift for carriers recommending bigger companies. And COVID really accelerated that because it's a single point of contact for the insurer. We're able to deliver a consistent quality product across the country. And we manage ourselves as far as from a performance and quality standpoint. So that whole industry movement is what drove me to think, look, if I'm going to survive, I'm going to have to make this big. I mean, there is a part of me that wants to do big things too, but honestly, it didn't start that way. I was just trying to make a living, right?
No, I get it. But there's a cultural thing that you're doing where you can create uniformity of service, uniformity of quality repair. There's skills involved, skills training. I walk into a McDonald's from your hometown, I'm going to get the same taste profile as if you walked into the McDonald's in my hometown, right? And so you're trying to give your customers this outstanding quality. You know that there's someone in a neighborhood of one of your 640 locations that called their friend and said, hey, I used Crash Champions. You guys should use them too. And so what is it? What is it? What is that secret ingredient that you have where, some people can start a shop, maybe get two shops going, but you created 640.
It's all about culture. It's all about people and your team. A couple stories if I can, not even related to the body shop. My first partner taught me something when I was young, and I think it was because he didn't think that my buddies that I was running around drinking beer with were the best friends to have. So he would tell me, surround yourself with better people, your life will be better. But in business, it's truly that. What I believe is the differentiator for us is our team. It's about the people. And another story. So early, mid-20s, fixing a car for a customer. And it was remember those conversion vans where they had all the plush interiors, where there's a couch and all kinds of, I've even seen some with little cabinets and sinks in the back of them. So this big old conversion van went through a hailstorm, and he brought it in to repair the roof. And originally the estimate with the insurance company was to repair the roof. And we got into it, and the roof was just too bad to repair it. We were going to need to replace it. And so ordered a new roof. We're putting a new roof on it. And the customer comes in to check on his car, and he was so angry at me. He lost his mind. You know why? Because I never called him. I never told him about us cutting the roof off of his car. And in my mind, I was doing a better repair than we originally thought, right? I was upgrading him. He didn't view it as an upgrade. And so, by pure mistake, and that many, many, many mistakes, I've learned transparency, over communicate. We operate under that principle of the difference is trust, because, look, nobody wants to have a car accident, but the reality is someday somebody somebody you love's gonna need a collision repair company, and you're gonna want to deal with somebody you can trust. And so we operate from the standpoint of every interaction. If you tell somebody you're going to call them tomorrow, call them tomorrow. If everything we do is a chance to build on that trust, or negatively tear it down if we do it wrong. And so we treat each other with that always in mind, and our customers always in mind. It's been a huge part of the culture. There's some things I can talk about that we do to build that culture, but how we've done it is
let me hear
people.
a few of them, Matt. What are a couple of things that you do to build a culture?
Sure. So, again, stumbled into this one. We did an acquisition up in Montana, and the guys were so excited about this training that they do with their smaller company. And the training is done by an ex-Blue Angel pilot, Top Gun instructor, an ex-Navy SEAL, and then we call him Doc. He's a psychologist. And so these guys were doing some culture build training. And my COO is an ex-Navy SEAL. So he really got into it when he saw what they were doing. We went up there as an executive teams with our wives, and we took some of the things that they're training, and we implemented it into our company. And so starting with simple things, getting people to understand our why and what we're about. They had assigned me to read General Mattis's book called Sign Chaos. Yep. So from that book, in that book, there's a section where he talks about the commander's intent and shares the commander's intent. Excuse me, need a sip of water here. He shares that commander's intent that he sent to his troops as he sent them into Iraq. Now, I understand that's a way bigger mission, a way bigger everything than my little company, but they said, okay, Matt, now go home tonight and write a mission statement for your company. And it was funny because we went out and had a little bit of fun that night. I woke up in the next morning, and I sleep on things, come up with, and think about them all night, come up with something. I put it together, and my team was like, did you really write this? I'm like, well, we're in the middle of Montana, in the middle of nowhere. Like, I don't know who else would have wrote it, but it was based on those things about our name. Our very name has the word champion in it. So what does it mean to be a champion? Surpass all rivals. We believe the difference is trust. This is how we're going to operate. And so
I love the story,
gives people a clear direction. It's been awesome. So we built this training, get them up there. They put them on a gun range, which, you know, people have so much emotions around guns. And it's so cool to watch people who maybe have hated guns, nervous, like we're just shooting at a target in the middle of nowhere, but get people out of their comfort zone and experience something new, and growth comes from that. So it's pretty cool stuff.
You have this great story, and I can tell you got this great spirit of getting along with people, managing conflicts, growing a business. You've got 640 stores. How many stores are we going to have in 5 years?
5 years. Hopefully 2,000.
2,000.
Sure.
All right. You have any on Long Island?
Not yet.
Right.
The biggest company in the industry is got 1,800 today. So they're going to grow, and I want to catch them one day. I think the industry will continue to be just like a lot of industries where there's a couple known national players. Mm-hmm. And I would love for us to be one of the last two standing.
Well, I want to hang out with you, Matt. I never want to use you, though. Okay, I don't want to be in a car crash. Okay, I want to
come back and relive some of them childhood shop memories.
Yes, I want to hang out with you. So the question I have, and I want you to really think about this. Okay, so take a moment. Okay, you're starting out, and you're meeting the young Matt Ebert. Okay, so it's the 21-year-old version of you. Number one, okay, I want you to think about, did you think you would be where you are today? Okay, that's my question to you. And then I want you to, what would the advice be that you would have given based on your life experience? So for me, for the Anthony Scaramucci of 21, I would say, take more risk, be less afraid. You know, I was so self-conscious and so scared as a kid. Not anymore, but I probably wasted some time doing that. What is your advice to yourself?
That's awesome. So I didn't have the risk thing. I've done. The thing about having nothing is then you don't have much to lose. So risk wasn't my issue. I cashed advance $100,000 on credit cards to get started. So that tells you how willing I was to take a risk. Now it's funny because I think it's because of the wife and kids. Like now I'm a little more reserved, but back then. But I didn't answer your question. Your question was, did I think I would be that big? Answer is hell no. Like I had to learn to think that big. I had to learn to raise my thermostat over time. Mm-hmm. My advice that I would give is I spent a lot of years like just not wanting to struggle, like just wanting things to be easier. And my advice would be they don't. The struggle, the problems is where the opportunity is. It's going to be always a roller coaster. And I tease like in that up and down roller coaster, right? Mm-hmm. The great thing about being in the low point in the roller coaster is if you know you're in the low point, there's nowhere to go but up. So I get nervous when things are going really, really well because I wonder when the bottom's going to fall out. But
listen, I appreciate that. I admire that.
I mean, has that been your experience too? I'm sure from what I know.
Listen, I mean, listen, there's no entrepreneur. You, me, you pick the entrepreneur. Jeff Bezos, Michael Dell. They don't go straight up. You know, they get hit, and it's how you respond after you've been hit. You know, which is why I wanted to ask you that question. You know, right? You're in the world of crashes. But we've all had some crashes, right? All of us. You know what I mean? We can't help it. So we're now at the point in the podcast where I have 5 words. I always read out to my guests. I'm going to say the word, and then you got to think about in your mind 1 or 2 sentences that you think about when you hear the word. Okay, you ready?
Okay. Sure.
All right, the first word is trust, Matt.
Important. I can only answer it with 1 word. So important.
All right. Yeah. Second word is team. You can give me a sentence or 2. You don't have to just
it's all about the team. It's all about you.
Preeminent, super important. The number 1 priority. Right?
Yeah. You can accomplish so much more with a team. People long to be part of something bigger than themselves. So do I. Like on an island by yourself is no fun. It's all about the team, and the team can do so much bigger things than I could ever dream of doing.
Mission.
Mission is to me, it's a calling. Like it's something in me. There's a calling that's bigger than me. It gets redefined, right? Because you have to adapt. It's ever changing, and it grows.
Okay, ready?
Yep.
Matt Ebert.
A work in progress.
All right, that's good. Like all of us, right? How about the 2 words crash champions?
Friggin' awesome.
I mean, I'm going to leave it right there because I think it's all for me, especially even your body language related to it, right? You put this thing together, Matt. You deserve all the credit and success in the world. You know, congratulations to you and your family. Joining us today is Matt Ebert.
Do I get one question before you make me go away?
Yeah, you can get one. Go ahead.
All right. So we're doing this little, we're calling it Pod Crash. So I think we got another cool name. Yeah. As somebody who's never hosted one, wants to do one, what would be your advice?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would go to YouTube and I would go to hosts techniques and how do hosts interview people. And I would listen to people like Charlie Rose and I would listen to people like Joe Rogan talk about their interview styles. And I would take some time to learn that because I think one of the problems I had in the beginning, I had no media training. I was talking over people, or I thought I needed to say more than I actually do. When you're hosting the show, it's very, very important to make Matt Ebert, who's the guest, express himself and to get his voice and his narrative out. And so sometimes hosts have a tendency to make the conversation even, but a really good host, if you listen to Rogan, he makes the other person do most of the talking. Howard Stern, who was probably more of a sensationalist 20 years ago, is now a phenomenal interviewer. He actually comes very well prepared, and he's sitting there listening, you know. And so that's my advice. If you're going to host Pod Crash, you'll be great at it, but just study some of the great ones, and you'll be even better.
Appreciate it.
All right,
so
man,
much.
My pleasure. Matt Ebert, the founder and CEO of Crash Champions, thank you so much for coming on Open Book today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.